A state of emergency in Iraq. Good evening, everyone. I'm Wendy Griffith. A major defeat for Iraq's government and a victory for Islamic insurgents. Militants overran Iraq's second largest city this morning. The parliament speaker says the terrorist groups threaten not only Iraq, but the whole Middle East. The prime minister is calling for a state of emergency, and he's asking the U.S. for help. Heather Sells has our top story tonight.
Iraqi government forces in Mosul have been fighting al-Qaeda insurgents for years, dating back to the Iraqi war. But now Islamic militants have overrun much of this city, and the security forces have collapsed.
They abandoned their arms, ammunition, and armored vehicles and their positions, leaving them behind to terrorists. They even left Mosul airport and some planes.
Mosul is a strategic prize for these insurgents who have been advancing in Syria as well as Iraq. Experts believe they plan to set up a military enclave straddling the border between the two countries. The assault in Mosul also shows just how Iraq has changed since American forces left 3 years ago. The depth of the blow can be seen in the latest move by the country's prime minister, who is now calling for a state of emergency, hoping that the greater powers will allow him to run the country for now.
We have to declare a comprehensive mobilization and the utmost alert in political, financial, and popular capabilities to defeat terrorism and bring life to normal in all areas occupied by terrorists.
On Sunday, car bombs exploded across the Iraqi capital, killing 4 and underscoring the sectarian violence that threatens the country's stability. Regaining Mosul remains a daunting challenge. A Sunni Muslim majority live here, many of whom are deeply embittered against al-Maliki, a Shiite, and his government. Heather Sells, CBN News.
Joining us now is Chief International Correspondent Gary Lane. Gary, what can you tell us about this terrorist group and its goals?
The Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, which is the area of Syria, Iraq, Jordan, and Israel. This group started about 10 years ago, Wendy, fighting American troops in Iraq. If you remember Fallujah and the Marines and the battle they had there with this group, but they shifted to Syria. They've made significant gains in Syria, mostly in the north and the eastern part of Syria, aligned with the al-Nusra group. They were at one time aligned with al-Qaeda, but even al-Qaeda says they're too extreme because they kill civilians. But this group is on the move in Iraq.
Gary, the U.S. lost 4,500 soldiers, and we've spent $2 trillion in Iraq.
Yes.
How could this happen?
Well, Wendy, I think it shows you that you can provide the most advanced weaponry, you can provide the training, but what do you do about someone's will if they don't have the will to fight? And as they were overwhelmed in Mosul today and this week, many of these Iraqi fighters laid down their weapons, they abandoned their uniforms, you could see them lying in the streets. They don't have the will to give their lives for al-Maliki and his government. They'd rather live.
What should America do right now to help?
Well, what can we do? We've already provided them with the weaponry that they've needed. They want more. They say, send us more. But, you know, on the internet today, you could see photos of the Chechen leader of the militia there, the Islamist militia, actually in a Humvee, an American-made Humvee. They also captured some helicopters at the airport. Now, can you imagine that? They captured these helicopters. I don't know that they know how to fly them, but that's chilling, isn't it?
It is.
So I don't think the Pentagon wants to send them more for them to capture.
Well, Gary, what can you tell us about Mosul and the Nineveh province?
Mosul is the second largest city in Iraq. It's been a hotbed for militant Islamic militants. The United States could never control that area during our 10-year war there. And now it's in the control of this Islamist group. But Mosul and Nineveh have been an area just north of Mosul. Nineveh, as you know from the Bible, that's where Jonah went after he refused to go and obey God on that, ended up in the belly of a big fish. But the Christians have settled there. Many of them have gone there. They've wanted a separate autonomous state there. But all of this is in question now as you have these Islamists controlling that area and on the move. We may see the Balkanization of Iraq and eventually Syria as well.
Gary, thanks so much for your insights. We appreciate it.